Wednesday, July 11, 2018 at 6:30. Just a few notes here before we begin. This meeting is being taped for the TCTV Local Channel 8. If anyone else is taping, please raise your hand and let us know for the record. For the record, I see nobody. Comments are only allowed during the public comment section of the board meeting. For the benefit of those watching at home, anyone wishing to comment at the time will need to come to at the front table and sit where the microphone is in order to speak. Anyone wishing to be acknowledged by the board should raise their hand and wait to be called on. This will keep the meeting orderly, allow business at hand to be completed. Times will be kept to a minimum, so our regular business may be attended to in a timely manner. We thank you for your cooperation. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to request a moment of silence for Rudy Sundstrom, who passed away on July 2nd.
So done. Moment of silence, please.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
May I also say it's very nice to see you, Ida. I'm so glad that you're feeling well.
Appointments and introductions.
We have none for you this evening, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Joint meeting with the Housing Authority regarding appointment candidates to the Housing Authority through the May of 2019 election. Mr. Tenzini.
Mr. Chairman, there was a failure to elect at the annual town meeting. The clerk notified us of this, and we reached out to the Housing Authority. In such an event, the remaining members of the Housing Authority and this body meet in joint session to nominate and appoint someone until the next regularly scheduled election. We do have one applicant. It was put on the web for other potential applicants. And I would just ask that you have the members of the Housing Authority who are present. I do see they're sitting together because I don't know as many folks as I'd like. Perhaps just state their names so we can have it for the record. And then I believe there's 3 members present. Right. Then the 7 of you can decide how you wish to proceed.
Excellent. Housing Authority, please just state your name for the record, please.
Stephen Olson, Chairman.
Carol Casey.
Ida Bean.
Great. All right, so collectively, did you have candidates in mind, or did you have a candidate in mind?
Just the one that's sitting handed.
Just that one, right?
Yep.
Okay. That would be Mr. Columbus?
Yep.
Because they were speaking about him like he's not here.
No, we like John. He's a good guy.
And it is a majority vote of the 2 boards. So since you have 7 people present, it will be a 4-vote majority that elects.
Does any of the select board members have any questions or comments? Anything?
I don't know.
Okay.
John, why do you want to be on the Housing Authority?
Well, I was previously on, for 5 years, from 2009 to 2014. And well, I really haven't been looking to get involved in these type of things anymore. It come to my attention that they were having difficulty holding meetings because it's a 5-member board. There's 3 of them there. If one person is absent, they can't hold a meeting, which means the business doesn't get done. So I thought I would go back on just to facilitate the business.
Do you feel that you'll be able to attend most of the meetings?
It's, with the
Where you're
morning-
saying that, okay. And how often do you meet?
Once a month.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, John, for your answer.
And Mr. Chairman, just so the board will understand, there's 3 members, they have 5 in total, but the state vacancy has not been filled.
And
State vacancy.
I understand from talking with the executive director that she's looked it up, because we've asked the state for a state appointee, and they never acknowledge anything, which is not out of the unusual. But we were informed that this board, the select board, could appoint a state appointee if we didn't get a reply back in so many days from the state, so many months. And we haven't. We've asked 3 years in a row now and haven't got nothing back. So if we could get another candidate, you could appoint him as the state appointee.
Yes.
Might I ask a question, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm not familiar with that statute. Perhaps if we could get reference to it, then
I'll have-
we could,
I'll have
we could bring
Louise-
it in front of this
Yep.
body,
I'll have Louise gather it up.
and
Yep,
they could then decide
Yep.
how to proceed. I'm
Okay.
I'm not familiar with it.
okay. I will get Louise to dig that out. She
Chapter-
was just talking about it today, because we had a board meeting today, and she was talking
Thank you,
about
Mr.
it.
Chairman.
Thank you. Does that have any
Okay, thank
questions?
you.
Any questions or comments? Does your board have any questions or comments?
No,
Anything to add?
John to join for a while, so.
I-
We even tried twisting up his arm around the back of his head, but
It didn't work well.
that didn't work.
Well, I would like to thank John for wanting to get involved again, and I would like to nominate John Columbus to the position of the Housing Authority.
With the termination May of,
I move to appoint John Columbus to the Housing Authority for a term to end at May 2019 annual town meeting. I'm sorry.
That's
I
okay.
misspoke, so I am amending my motion.
And I would
Thanks.
second that motion.
Doug,
Okay.
I did not see that there.
okay, I have a motion and do I have a second?
Yes, I
Well,
second
this board can second it.
I
I'll
sure
second
can.
it.
You sure can.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I have a second. Any other discussion? Yes. No, you can't get out of it.
Ability to appoint a state appointee came with, a couple of years ago, there was a municipal modernization act or
Mhm.
something. That was included as part of that.
That was in
package.
Munimod?
What's that?
That was in the Munimod Pact,
The what?
the Municipal Modernization
Yeah.
Act.
Thank you, John.
Okay, thanks, John. Any other discussion? I see none. I'll start with us first. Kim? Yes. Doug?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
I vote yes.
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous.
Unanimous.
Good luck, John. I'll text you later. Okay, you got it.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much for coming. Public hearing, Class 2 license, Hastings Motor Works, Inc. The
Yep,
representative
you
here?
can Come up front, yeah,
What if I was,
please.
how you doing, sir? Can you state your name for the record, please?
No, it's, no, I don't think so. Yeah, no, I think that's, no, that's how it's spelled.
Okay.
John,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, was there a specific time?
There wasn't.
For
There
this
was
public hearing?
6:30 or thereafter, as soon
Okay,
as the
thank you.
agenda permits,
Okay, thank
was
you.
on the posting. But that was a good call. Holly, all the paperwork's in order?
It is. I just wanted to comment that this isn't your typical Class 2. He's not gonna have cars on the property. It's more of a, how would you describe it?
An auto broker,
An
essentially.
auto broker. He's gonna
Did
be
you say your name for the
buying and
record?
selling.
He did.
Yes, I did. Christopher Hastings.
I'm sorry,
That's
could
okay.
I just make a comment that I'm not wearing my hearing aids today? I forgot them, so I did not hear that.
No problem. Christopher Hastings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So no cars in the lot, just auto broker online?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Does that mean you won't have any customers going to the lot either?
No customers on the property.
Strictly online, no
Strictly
cars, no
online.
customers?
Yep, auction to transport.
Perfect.
So, yep.
Okay. Does have any questions for Mr. Hastings?
I don't. I read the
Yes, sir.
paperwork.
Yes, I'm just.
John?
Yes.
I need him to stand.
Yeah, can you stand and just identify yourself, sir, for me?
Michael Rhodes, 562 Baldwinville Road.
Mhm.
Chris, the question is, we're concerned about any kind of development plans that you might have for the property as being abutters. For instance, are you gonna be clearing, making a parking lot? But as it sounds that you're not planning any,
None whatsoever.
none whatsoever.
None whatsoever.
Okay, no lights?
No lights, no nothing. Nothing added to the property.
All right, well, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Good question. Yes, ma'am. Please identify yourself, please.
Sheila Taylor, 8 Ledge Drive.
How are you?
I just wanted to, so you mentioned that it's not a typical license, there will be no cars. Is that actually spelled out in the license?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is.
Okay. And, is that, if you sell the business, does the license get transferred to a new person? And then would that be applicable to them as well?
If it did get transferred, it would be transferred as is, or it would
Okay.
have to come back to the board for any changes.
Okay. And so some of this is word of mouth that I've heard around town, but I've heard that it's going to be, just be a home office temporarily.
I plan on purchasing the house eventually.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
okay, okay. Okay, and then, so is that why it requires a license, because you don't live there now?
It is on my home address as of now.
Okay,
It is,
okay.
yeah.
It requires the license because it's the buying and selling of cars, so it comes under the Class 2 umbrella.
Even though none of them will ever be on the property?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. So I think that answers most of my questions then. So, okay, thank you.
Sheila,
Yeah.
if it says right here on the bottom of the license, to put your mind at ease, right on the bottom.
Just to clarify, that's not the license, that's
That's
from
the
the
application,
from the
but-
building inspector's
Yeah.
office.
Okay.
But it says
So
that
then
we
we'll set
know.
Will be
on
on
the
the
license.
license, yes.
Perfect, perfect,
Okay.
great, thank you.
You're very welcome. Does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Hastings?
Sorry.
Yes, sir. Identify yourself.
I just wanted,
Michael Duval, 5 Ledge Drive, across the street.
could you speak up just a little bit?
Michael Duval, 5 Ledge Drive. Sheila covered most of the questions. Understands online, and future state, it can't change, right? It's gonna stay that way as the license states. Will there be any kind of signage on the property at all?
None whatsoever.
It's just like a regular residence as it is today?
Absolutely, nothing's gonna change.
Okay. Okay, that's all.
For it to change to a different use, it would have to go back to the building inspector and they would have to look at the zoning.
Okay. Okay, very good.
Sorry, Sheila, and would letters go out again to the abutters
Yes.
at that point? Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything else? Let's see.
Christopher, thank you for answering all of their questions.
I'll entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the Class 2 auto dealer license for Hastings Motorworks, Inc. through December 31st, 2018.
Okay, I have a motion. I have a second.
A second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? See none. Kim?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes,
And I vote yes as well. Good luck to you, Mr. Hastings.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
And thank you for the abutters coming in and your questions.
Thank you.
Presentation regarding the Odyssey FY17 OPEB evaluation sewer commission. Mr. Kenzine?
Kelly? Come up, please. For now, Mr. Chairman, we've distributed to you the PowerPoint presentation that'll be used. We retained Odyssey to carry out that valuation for both the general fund and the sewer fund. We do have the complete packages we'll give you all for reading.
Great.
Leveling out furniture that's not quite level, or, you know,
Oh,
what you want to
boy.
do with it.
Doing whatever.
Get us any questions that you might have in the next 2 weeks or so, and we'll get your responses as soon as we can thereafter.
Okay.
So with that, I would have Kelly introduce the representative of Odyssey, and we can go forward from there. Do I see anyone from the Sewer Commission present? No? Okay, we'll get their copies down to them.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Last name. Okay, so this is Parker Elmore, and he's with Odyssey. They're out of Connecticut. Of the different firms that we got bids from, they were the lowest bid for what they offer. They also do the actuarials for the light and water department. So in time, we're hoping that will be possibly a reduced cost, kind of a little bit for each of us, because they're doing pretty much the whole town, and we have the same benefit type packages with the retirees and everything. So with that, I'll give it to him, and he's going to go over this. Like Carter said, each one's about 73 pages. So I'm hoping in this document he can explain it so that we all kind of understand it, so we're not bogged down with the 73 pages.
Well, correct. Well, hey, thank you for having me out. Yeah, we do this for quite a few entities in your neighborhood: Templeton Light and Water, Athol, Rutland, Lancaster, about 200, pushing 300 entities in Massachusetts, plus another 100 probably around the rest of the U.S. We have offices in Connecticut and Nevada, 37 states clients, Europe, et cetera, which none of you are going to care about, so let's get on to the fun stuff. So GASB 74 and GASB 75, because GASB 45 was an accounting statement that was issued back in 2006 and was effective for you guys in 2010. My understanding from talking to your auditors is you guys didn't exactly fully comply with GASB 45, which is fine. Well, GASB 45 was, basically the idea was to take retiree medical benefits, which is largely what this is about. So you offer medical benefits to your people after they should retire, to move that from a pay-as-you-go, hey, I paid $100 for Mary's premiums this year, that's all we run through the financial statement, to move that to an accrual statement. In other words, we're going to accrue the benefits over Mary's working lifetime. GASB 75 came along, this was issued about 2 years ago, it's effective for fiscal 18. The idea now is that right now the liability under GASB 45 was shown in the notes section of your financial statement. This will now move it to the balance sheet of your financial statement. The other big issue I would tell you is you know, Kelly just described, the reports are large, massive, ridiculous, all true. Most of which I would say useless. But that was not my fault. GASB designed the statement, so this is where we are. On the pension side, you guys recently went through something very similar called GASB 67 and 68. GASB 74 and 75 largely mirror that. It's almost like they took the word pension out, put the word OPEB in, and pretty much that's about what they did. Which yields some unusual things that don't really apply to OPEB, but again, this is where we are. I think that probably the key elements that I would tell you is, again, it mirrors GASB 67 and 68. Probably the most important thing I can tell you is the interest rate that you use to determine the liabilities. So higher interest rates equal lower liabilities, lower interest rates equal higher liabilities. Your interest rate is determined based on basically 5 key factors. One is, what are municipal bonds yielding these days? When you're trying to sell bonds right now, it's great. Municipal bonds have a very low yield. The problem is that same low yield goes to also drive down the discount rate we get to use for these liabilities. What are the benefit payments every year and going into the future? That drives the number. Your funding policy, how much money are you going to set aside every year? How much money is already there? Followed by, once you put the money in, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to invest it? Stocks, bonds, mutual funds, cash, all those things factor in. So in your guys' case, when we take all that magic and the mumbo jumbo and run it through the GASB accounting standards, for the town side, we end up about a 5% discount rate. So that means all future payments, I bring them back to today at a 5% interest rate. On the sewer side, because of how much money they're setting aside, they can get about a 5.5% discount rate. So their numbers comparatively will look a little bit better, all things equal. So this is effective for your 2018 fiscal year. And on, I guess, the 4th page of this, just a couple of key terms and dates I guess I would tell you. Because GASB, again, makes this far more complicated than is really necessary, but this is where we are. So we have a valuation date, which is the date at which we value all the liabilities. And we have something called a measurement date. Well, when are we going to measure that as of? So even though I might have valued the liabilities on July 1st of 2017, when am I going to measure them? Followed by the last thing is your reporting date, which is really your fiscal year end. Under GASB 75, I am allowed to measure things up to a year before my fiscal year end. So I can say that the number as it was on July 1st of 2017, that's the number I will report on June 30th of 2018. Now the obvious question is going, well, why would you want to report a year-old number? The very simple matter is the reason you do it that way is to make for a much cleaner, smoother audit. Because if we were to wait until June 30th to do all these numbers, that means we're going to start on June 30th. We're going to get the numbers maybe by October or November. In the meantime, your auditors can't do any work. We can get the numbers to your auditors much earlier in the year. They come in, do all their field testing. At year end, we simply drop off the GASB 74 and away you go. The rest of your financial statement, not my issue, but for this part of it, we can make it very clean. There are a ton of disclosures. Again, most of which I would tell you are useless, just like they are on your pension ones. You've taken a financial statement that used to be about yay thick, and now it's about yay thick. Nobody can read it, but it makes GASB happy. They somehow believe that Town of Templeton, City of New York, comparable entities, so they should have the same similar financial statement. They are comparable in the sense they're identical, they're just not readable. So we have things like deferred inflows and outflows. We have things like money-weighted rate of return. We have, one of the fun ones for the OPEB side of things is we have to disclose everything as a percentage of payroll, even though none of the benefits are payroll related. So again, they took that from the pension side for no apparent reason. So the key elements. From the town side, your liability was called the total OPEB liability. It used to be called the actuarial accrued liability. Because when GASB issued GASB 75, they thought it'd be a good idea to change all the terminology. So it's the same $6 million, just with a new label. My favorite, although we're not using it here, is it is no longer called assets now. It is called net fiduciary position. Because I guess assets was too confusing. So as of July 1st of 17, that didn't exist, but you did put in about $85,000 throughout the year. On the sewer side, about $35,000, I believe. I'll give the exact number in a second. So again, your guys' liabilities are a little on the high side, which you'll see in a little bit when you compare them to your peers. It's not unexpected. You have a more mature population. As people are older, they have higher liabilities. They're closer to retirement. People have more service. They've accrued more of the benefit that they will ultimately receive. So it's not unusual, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just demographics. The other side of it is you will see certain towns here have much lower liabilities. As an example, came up, gee, why does Lancaster look so much better than us? Well, Lancaster set aside a ton of money for this. I mean, they're a comparably sized town, but they've set aside a ton of money. Therefore, they have a much higher discount rate, which therefore drives their liabilities down. If you guys decided tomorrow you were going to drop $3 million into your OPEB trust, your numbers would also look much better. Your taxpayers would be in revolt, but your OPEB numbers would look lovely. So, keep that in mind as a potential option. So again, as far as the results go, from the income statement side of it, basically how much money flows through your financial statement every year. There's something called a service cost, also known as a normal cost. That's the value of benefits being earned during the year by your active population. So on the town side, it's about $195,000. On the sewer side, it's about $23,000 bucks. So if you think about it in these terms, so on the town side, it's a little over $5,000 bucks per active employee, and the sewer side, a little less than $4,000. If Mary or Joe is working for you making $45,000 a year, let's say, they're also earning $5,000 a year in deferred compensation in the form of future medical benefits that they will receive. So that's really what this service cost represents. It's not a cash cost today. It's a representative of a payment that will be made in the future, and this is this year's earning thereof. The employer's share of costs is much what you probably think it is. It's the retiree medical benefits paid by the employer, so it's not the employee share, it's how much you guys paid. About $281,000 on the town side, $33,000 on the sewer side. And again, the trust contributions we spoke about, you put in about $85,000, sewer put in $25,000. So your OPEB expense is simply the net of those two numbers. That's the net number that gets close to your financial statement saying, hey, your real OPEB cost, above and beyond, above and beyond the contributions is the $206,000. Now, one key thing I would tell you is this thing called implicit cost, and I will tell you it's confusing for folks in your situation, it's confusing for the auditors, it's confusing for everybody. So I'll just take a very quick 5-second thing on implicit cost. The gist of it is, the older you are, on average, the more likely you are to use healthcare services. So your guys' medical care premiums say that a 25-year-old employee and a 55-year-old employee pay the same medical care costs, pay the same health insurance premiums. That's fine. That has no basis in reality, except for the fact that's what the insurance company has blended them all together. From the retiree medical side, I only have to look at a retiree-only pool. So if I took all of your active population out and went to Blue Cross or Harvard Pilgrim or whatever and said, guys, just rate Templeton's retirees by themselves, the rates would be much higher. Those are the rates we have to use. But unfortunately, you look at it and say, well, I'm paying Blue Cross $620 a month. Yeah, but the real premium for that 55-year-old retiree is closer to $1,000 a month. There's this implicit cost, which is that differential. That factors into all these numbers because GASB requires to reflect the true cost of the plan, not what the insurance company pays you, or what you pay the insurance companies. So the key actuarial assumptions, the discount rate we talked about, that's 5%. That's the interest rate we use every year to bring all the dollars back to today. So all these future payments you're going to be making under this plan, if you think about how this works, we're taking your active population today and all the retirees, projecting all these people out for the next 100 years. When are they going to start employment? When are they going to leave employment? When are they going to retire? When are they going to become disabled? When are they going to, if they're going to cover a spouse at retirement, are they going to be married at retirement? Are they going to elect to take coverage for themselves? What are medical care costs going to be? When are they going to die? I will tell you in advance, I do not know the answers to any of those questions. I do not want to know the answers to any of those questions. If I know when everybody's going to die, that's probably not a good thing. But nonetheless, we have to make assumptions for all of these things. And so that's what flows into all of this, is the discount rate, the probability you terminate employment, the probability you retire, probability you elect to take benefits. The other big one is medical care costs. And I know we had some discussions about this, is what is future medical care costs going to be? Well, I will tell you that the standard in the industry is to basically assume the long-term inflation rate is about 5% for healthcare costs. I will tell you personally, I think that number is probably a little on the low side, based on having done this stuff now for pushing 35 years. We have ups, we have downs. The last 6 to 7 years, we have really good experience. We've seen a lot of 2%, 3% increases. Great. I also tell people who are old enough to remember the early 90s, we went through something very similar, and then we had 15, 15, 15. So I think it was squeezing a balloon. Eventually, the doctors and hospitals want to get paid. Also, we live in a wealthy society, and people want to live. And if there's, availability out there of healthcare treatments they can get, they're going to want them. So that generally tends to drive up healthcare costs. With that said, that is a very significant assumption. We'll monitor it over time and see what happens. But, again, for the last, from 2011 probably to 2016, we saw very few people hitting 5%. 2018, 2017, I'm seeing a lot of 8s and 9s. We'll see what happens as we go forward. Medical plan offerings just kind of show you kind of on the town side, your most popular plan, not surprisingly, is the Network Blue Value Plus. That's where everyone is. And on the Medicare population side, you're in MedX2. You've taken the easy savings. There are a lot of people in MedX3. They switched to MedX2. That was the big savings. Now that's done, so the ability to really make savings that way is gone. And thank you, good job for doing that. But again, that's already been done.
Mm-hmm.
We just kind of give you a funding comparison to all of our other clients, and this ratios are about a year old now. We have to update them now, but they're still pretty valid. So I know you sit there and go, oh, gee, we're just starting the fund. We feel like we're so far behind and this, that, and the other thing. What's everybody else doing? The reality is about a third of people haven't set aside a dime. As you'll see here, 50% are less than 0.25% funded. 68% are less than 1% funded. 92% are less than 10% funded. So you have plenty of company in not funding. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't fund. I will tell you that as GASB 75 is getting adopted, and the numbers are now moving to the balance sheet, we are seeing much more of a move toward funding. A lot more people now are going, oh my God, the bond rating agencies are going to look at this. We got to really do something about it. I will tell you the big thing that S&P, Fitch, and Moody's want to see is a plan. It's not so much that you set aside 20 grand or 50 grand or 100 grand. What's the plan? How are you addressing the issue? And the second part I would tell you on that is going, you can't address it on funding alone. They want to see the overall management of the liability. So we have a town of ours that was trying to get a AAA rating, and my guy was very disappointed. He goes, we've been setting aside money, we're doing a good job, but it's not enough. I go, yeah, because they want to see what you're doing on the liability side of the equation, not just the funding side, because eventually there's not enough money. I mean, you can't possibly fund your way out of this unless, hey, if the stock market earns 35% a year from now until the end of time, great. But I don't think that's a plan. I mean, I argue you can put the entire pool in lottery tickets and about as equally likely. So again, I think you have to do both sides of the equation. So some comparisons we spoke about to other, Odyssey clients. We work with, again, a lot of folks around here, Holden, Lancaster, Lunenburg, et cetera. You'll see yourself on the top line. The average normal cost per participant about $5,200. You'll see that, again, a Lunenburg is a little higher than that. A Rutland's a little higher than that. Lancaster being the outlier, very, very low. But as we spoke about, they are funding a lot of money. That yields a much higher discount rate, which drives down the liabilities. It's not a shock. They also charge the retirees more money than you do. I'm not saying you should or shouldn't charge retirees, whatever. That's really none of my business. But that does obviously, impact costs. You'll see the net OPEB liability. You're at about 367% of payroll. As I said, that is higher than your peers. There's really two main reasons. As I said, you have a more mature population, and both in terms of average age and service of the active population, but also the demographics, the number of active employees versus the number of retirees.
Right.
You are not, some of my towns might have, I have some small collaboratives, let's say, with 111 active employees and 2 retirees. Well, their liabilities look very different than that. They go, my liabilities are 82% of payroll, who cares? Well, yeah, because nobody's retired yet. So eventually they're going to get there. And that's really why these statements exist, because otherwise they would show a zero liability. Oh, everything's great. Well, guys, because, the pig hasn't gone through the python yet, we're just starting to eat. In your guys' case, the meal's almost over. So you guys have largely addressed the issue. You're, near peak liability, if you will, as a percentage of things. And then your retiree costs, yeah, yours are a little about $8,000 a retiree. Again, it's a little higher than the average, but again, it's not unexpected based on, again, you have some retirees that are not yet Medicare eligible. Those drive up the costs. As they move into the Medicare plans, your costs will come down per retiree. So again, nothing, I guess, surprising in that regard. Then this next page is pretty much the exact same chart, except we just wanted to give you a comparability of towns of similar size. I mean, geography is great, but everyone goes, well, I might be next to Boston, but it doesn't mean I am Boston. Well, same thing here. Let's show you against towns of, they're towns with 50, 60, 70 employees. And again, you're getting a little on the high side, but again, not unexpected, because many of them have started the fund. You guys have the low, except for Groveland, have the lowest discount rate of anybody on that chart. So it's not unexpected. I guess on the next page, and normal cost per employee, we already spoke about that. It's been on the last couple slides. It's showing that, it's $5,200 per employee. So again, going back to my earlier argument, it's really deferred compensation. Mary Jones or John Smith earns $45,000, and they earn $5,000 in deferred comp to be paid in the form of medical, dental, life insurance benefits in retirement. So that's really all that represents. And really, this next slide is really to show you kind of what the future looks like. Now, the one thing I say, in the report we show this in present value terms that I've added maybe 5-6 years ago at this point. Because the problem is, what happens is, people see these numbers in the out years and they throw up their hands and say, why even try? So you go, hey, we're going from $6 million to $40 million. That's ridiculous. We'll never be able to do anything. Why even try? Well, the point is, we give you in present value dollars in terms of what is it in today's dollars, percentage of today's budget. And you'll find that in the report, and your number is basically, instead of $40 million, are more like, I can get you the exact number, but it's like 9 to 10. So it's still higher, absolutely. But it's not ridiculous. It's not saying, why even try? It's saying, yeah, it's a number, but we can address it. We've got 40 years to get to that point. This is not, it's much like Social Security. Everybody knows how to fix the problem, but there's no votes to fix the problem. And it's the same thing here. You can make small, modest increases along the way, and you can solve the problem. Or you can wait until, oh my God, our liability is $40 million. What do we do? The town's gonna go bankrupt, and slash everything to the ground. You don't have to do that. You have plenty of opportunities, and that's the point of giving you these tools, so you can have actionable information that you can do something with. And then I guess just the last thing here is the Affordable Care Excise Tax, the Cadillac tax, goes by all kinds of names. It is technically the law, and therefore is technically reflected in its valuation. It has a very minor impact on your numbers, but it is reflected because it is the law. And what it means is that if and when it ever takes effect, it was supposed to take effect in 2018, then deferred to 2020, then deferred to 2022. My guess it'll be deferred to 2025 or thereabouts and keep on going, for the simple reason of there's no one in love with it, but it theoretically raises a lot of money in congressional budget windows, therefore it has to stay. But with that said, what the tax does is says for every dollar that your healthcare costs exceed a certain threshold, you pay a tax of 40 cents on the dollar to the government. So in this case, the threshold is about $30,000 for a family plan. So if your family plan was $31,000, you would pay a $400 tax to the federal government. Now, technically, you don't pay the tax. The insurance company pays the tax. However, I don't think Blue Cross is just feeling so generous they will just absorb the costs. I believe they will pass them on to their consumers and their customers. So with that said, I come back to, again, Some of my clients have been very aggressive about trying to avoid the excise tax and doing plan design things to get around it. Other clients have gone, it's never gonna take effect, who cares? That's ultimately your call. I mean, listen, you guys can have the richest plans in the world or the skimpiest plans in the world. I'm fine with either one, it doesn't really matter to me. I wanna give you all the tools so you understand what drives the numbers. You know, what drives the numbers in a plan like yours is the Medicare plan you've already done medics to, the discount rate. Unless you're gonna start socking away a lot more money, that number is not really gonna move a ton. The medical trend rate, you know, again, if medical care costs come at 1%, 2%, 3% a year from now until the end of time, all these problems are solved, the federal budget's problems are solved, all kinds of things are solved. I don't believe that's gonna happen. So lastly, you're left with plan design, the hardest thing in the room. You know, you have to ultimately look at, what do we do on the plans? What do we charge the retirees? The state doesn't give you a lot of tools. On other states, I can manage all kinds of things. In Massachusetts, you can't. You can't change the eligibility. You can't charge the retirees more than 50%. You can't have what you charge the retirees based on how much service they have or what age they retire. In California, I do that all day long. In Connecticut, I do that all day long. In Delaware, in Texas. Here, you can't do that. Not saying that's good or bad, it just is. That's the universe we have to operate in. So how do we find a way to make these costs manageable so that your guys' financial statement works? Because this is an ongoing concern. Both the plan and the town, we need to make sure this thing fits within the overall scheme of it. So I know there's a lot of information here, and I'm not trying to bore you to tears with this stuff, but trying to at least get the information out on the table. If you have questions, obviously, I'm more than happy to answer them, or, you know, whatever you wish.
Okay, thank you, sir. Anybody have any questions?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
So, my first question to you is on the balance sheet of the GASB 75 results. By the way, I can tell you really don't like GASB 75.
No, I mean, I just think it's ridiculous in terms of going, they've made a lot of extra aggravation for towns for limited utility. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's fine for us. I just think your auditors are gonna charge you more money, we're gonna charge you more money, and for what? So I don't think you're getting real value for your dollar.
So on page 5 here, we
Yep.
have the, as of 7/1/2017, the NOL here is $6,007,510.
Yep.
Is that going to be recorded on the balance sheet as that number, or is this going to be, so it is?
Yes.
This is our total liability here.
Yep.
Now, if we were to take a payment of that $6 million, which we don't have,
Yep.
if we were to apply that, where does that sit? Is this going to offset that on
Yes.
a debit side?
Exactly. So if you did that, you'd have $6 million in the asset side, and the NOL, the net OPEB liability, would then drop to zero.
Okay, so you're gonna record it on the asset end as well as on
Correct.
the liability, so they should be a wash.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, the key thing on that is, in order for it to flow in that exact way, it has to go into the OPEB trust and not just another part of the balance sheet.
Okay.
So I have towns who go, well, I got a $6 million stabilization reserve. Now, from a standpoint of the overall balance sheet, it's identical. But from a standpoint of whether or not I get to use a higher discount rate, the $6 million in the stabilization reserve, I don't get to count. You move it to the OPEB trust, now your discount rate probably goes to 7% in this liability. Instead of $6 million is now $4.5 million.
So on a reporting perspective, you would have a wash, but unless it's committed to the OPEB account, you wouldn't
Correct.
truly recognize any
Exactly.
contribution.
They'd be in different buckets. You get to the same place, but one part would look worse, one part would look better.
Now, this year, we made a contribution, and I see that on page 6 here in
Yep,
reference to the
85.
trust contribution.
Yep.
$84,608, sewer made a contribution of $25,000.
Yep.
But the total OPEB expense of itself was $206,000. So
Yep.
we were short of that by roughly 60%.
Yeah,
I think,
and
yeah.
very few people are making a contribution of the entire OPEB expense. Now, see, you guys, so just to be clear, your OPEB expense is the amount that gets flowed through the income statement. But remember, you've already paid $281,000 for the existing retirees, plus you're paying $84,000 on top of that. The problem you run into is, you look at your service cost, $194,000. That's what active employees are earning during the year. So if you just back up for a second, you're paying off a debt of, which is your $6 million. You're paying out $281,000 on that debt. You're adding $194,000 for the active employees. You're paying $84,000 toward that. So you're adding, while you pay off $281,000, you're adding back another $107,000 on top of that, plus then the interest on the $6 million at 5%, which is about $300,000. So that's how we end up netting to this 206 number when all is said and done.
Okay, so the contribution here on the $206,000 would be the wash number, though, correct? That would be if we were to fully fund our OPEB expense for the year, based off those calculations, that's what we should have made for a contribution.
Correct.
Now, if we make that contribution there, the liability account itself, that's still increasing year over year, but we're just trying to wash what the increase was for the year with
Yeah,
that
if you do the
asset.
206, what's gonna happen is, the only thing that's gonna happen is you're gonna have an interest charge, and you're gonna effectively eat up that interest charge. You're gonna stay at basically that $6 million number. You're not retiring the debt, but you're preventing the debt from getting larger.
Okay. So in order to attack this debt, we had to have levied a contribution over the $206,000 to make a dent into this.
Ultimately, yes.
In regards to the discount rate here, what is typically the threshold to increase your discount rate? I know you had mentioned
Yeah.
kind of economic factors
Yeah,
and the
so
total contribution.
As I said, there's really the 5 things. So your investment policy statement, how are you investing the money? If you tell me that you're gonna be in a very aggressive portfolio, say 75, 25 stocks, bonds, you're gonna get far more credit on the return assumption. But how much do I get to use that return assumption will depend on how much money you're setting aside, because we have basically what the funded part of the liability and the unfunded part of the liability. The unfunded part of the liability, we look at the municipal bond index rate, which is a 20-year index, about 3.25%. So I'm discounting all those numbers back at 3.25. The funded side I discount back, say, at 7. We'll blend those two numbers together. If you're very aggressive, depending on how much money you're putting in, we could get you all the way to a 7. I have plenty of towns that are at 7%. I have the majority of my towns are in the 3.25 to 3.75 range, because they're just not setting aside enough money to do it. So it really depends on how much money you're willing to set aside. It's really the combination of how much you're willing to set aside each and every year, not just one time, followed by how you're going to invest the money when it gets there. And again, in your case, because of the large share of retirees you currently already have a very heavy draw against the pool already. You know, $280,000 a year already going out. So in your case, even if everything, you started pouring in a ton of money, you're probably going to max out at 6.25, 6.5, probably at the high end, unless you're just ungodly pouring in money. But assuming you're under any kind of realistic time frame, you're probably maxing the 6.25, 6.5 range just because of your cash flow.
Okay. And so with that number of the $6 million now outstanding, I know we had talked about retirees kind of leaving the expense here on that. Now, would that number be reduced if retirees were removed from that pool? So if that $6 million was there and God forbid 20 of the retirees had disappeared, would that number reduce, or is that still fixed at that $6 million?
Oh, no. It's based on every year you look at the population as it exists at that time.
Okay.
So out of your $6 million, 2.6 of that is for existing retirees.
So if we reasonably forecasted that economic conditions now, as the Fed's raising interest rates, but as you had stated prior, that we're kind of at that peak liability rate, if the retirees come down and the economic factors or the interest rates rise, we're still kind of looking at a rough number of the similar contribution if the market
More than
turns
likely.
out
I mean,
that way.
again, because the other side of it is, you probably realize, the Fed can do whatever they want on interest rates. They control the short end of the curve.
Yep.
And so, because I have plenty of clients for doing other things, and we're trying to get interest rates to move up and be very helpful to them. And I go, guys, the Fed creates the short end of the curve, and if you look at the curve, we have a very flat yield curve now, almost inverted at this point. The long end of the curve is not going up, or at least not in any material fashion. So if we did, and the only way you really make that move is with economic growth. So if we can get the long end of the curve to go up, then that solves a lot of these problems.
Okay.
But again, to my other point, as I said earlier, municipal bond is what drives a lot of this. So, you know, if we get municipal bond rates up in, say, the 5% range, your OPEB liability will drop dramatically.
Okay.
Your borrowing costs will go through the roof. So, which would you rather have? If you're not looking to borrow any money, you go, 5% muni bond rate's great. That's perfect. My liabilities look great. But then again, if you're not looking to borrow any money, why do you care how much money's on your balance sheet anyway? So these two things kind of, it's two sides of the same coin. The things that make your liabilities high are the exact same things that allow you to borrow at a cheaper price. So it's a challenge. There's no doubt about that. The other thing I would tell you on the funding side is we see a lot of towns looking at dedicated sources of revenue. Because listen, nobody has an extra $250,000 a year laying around. I get that. So the question is, maybe it's a meals tax. We have towns that are looking at the recreational marijuana, dedicating some of that money aside. We have, you know, on the meals tax, I have a little, a client in Foxborough has a little football team plays there. They generate some money on that. So there's different ways you can do it. But, you know, again, there's not one size fits all, I guess the short answer. It's whatever works for your community. Some people it's 1% of payroll. Some people it's 25% of free cash. Some people it's an ad hoc. We get a lawsuit settlement, we'll put that money in. So it's just whatever you guys can stomach as a community.
Okay. And Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mr. Terenzini, On the, I don't know if you have this information on hand, I would never try to put you on the spot, but do you know what our current investment strategy is on the OPEB side? Do we have an investment strategy currently that's, or is?
I'll tell you, sorry.
Currently, it is invested with Bartholomew.
Mhm.
We have, the water department has now opened an OPEB trust.
Yep.
They can't have one on their own, so we now have three OPEB trusts with Bartholomew.
Okay.
And when they invest that money, they put it together as a pool.
Okay.
So then when the interest comes in, it's broken down. Right, I believe we're not in an aggressive. I think we're in.
You're reasonably aggressive. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to
Okay,
interrupt.
that's
but
fine.
But if you go to the report, and I'm not looking to bore you to tears, but in item 6 of the financial statement disclosures on page 25, we kind of outlined that the targeted asset allocations by function.
Okay.
And that weights out to about a 6.8 targeted annual rate of return.
Okay, wow.
So it's reasonably aggressive. It's not off the charts, don't get me wrong. We're not being stupid with
And
it.
we're not
but-
foreign exchange hedging?
Yeah, no, we're not doing any of that. No alternative, no hedge funds, no timber, nothing like that. But nonetheless, it's a reasonable portfolio.
Okay.
You're not, I get some clients who are entirely in cash. I have other clients who are way out there. And so you guys, I think, are solidly in the safe zone, if you will.
Okay, and so the real reason why I'm asking these questions is because we currently don't have a bond rating. I'm making sure and just reasonably seeing that as long as we have an investment strategy and we have the plan to pay this, you had stated that S&P, Moody, and Fitch, that they would be comfortable as long as we're making contributions to this, as long as, we're.
Yeah, I mean, what they want to see, again, is a plan. So like you guys
Okay.
are setting aside 85 grand a year. What you want to do is have a formal plan that you've adopted that says we're going to set aside 85 grand a year. And I know what everyone says is going, well, we don't know what the future is going to be. Why would we ever want to do that? To which I always say, a future board can undo everything you just did. So they can go, oh, those crazy people back in 2018, what were they thinking? We're not going to do that anymore. That's fine. The other side of this is your guys' pension plan theoretically will eventually become fully funded. Not as quickly as they tell you, but it will eventually become fully funded. When that happens, some of those funds are available. You could dedicate some of those to OPEB. You can use that in your funding plan. Now, again, in 2038, when that happens, the board may say, we're going to lower taxes, we're going to build a swimming pool, whatever. That's great. But nonetheless, in the interim, I get to use the fact that that is projected to be made to therefore increase your discount rate and lower your liability. Shows S&P and Fitch and Moody's, do you have a plan? And what we tell folks is, treat this as one combined retirement liability. You have a pension liability and an OPEB liability. We are funding pensions first because statutorily we have no choice. That is the law. But we're not ignoring OPEB. We are funding 85 grand a year for now until the pension plan is fully funded in 2035, 2036. Then we're going to roll a portion or all of those funds over to OPEB and start addressing the OPEB liability so that both funds will be fully funded by 2048 or whatever the number is. So you can show them a nice, easy plan that lays it all out. We've got a plan to do all this. And then you can go in there and again, that's all they really want to see is that you guys have actually thought this through and it's not just winging it every year, but you guys have actually sat down and thought about it.
And my last question to you, I actually have two questions. On page 11, we have a per covered retiree rate of the roughly $9,000, which
Yep.
is almost double and triple some of these other
Yep.
communities. And that was stated to be because we have a large retiree portion, which is driving
Well, it's not so much
healthcare
their large
costs.
retiree, it's the number of retirees you have that are not yet Medicare eligible.
Okay,
So when they're Medicare eligible, the premiums are low enough where it's not an issue. Going back to my implicit cost argument before, and just so I can quote a real number here. So,
Okay.
for example, a 63-year-old retiree, let's say, their medical care costs are about $15,000 a year, ballpark. The premiums you're getting charged by Blue Cross are closer to $9,000. Nonetheless, I'm rating that as a $15,000 premium. So all those retirees that are 62, 63 years old, that's a $15,000 cost going into that average.
Okay.
When they flip to 65, that cost then drops dramatically. So that's why I say that number, it's an interesting number, but again, the laws of large numbers don't work particularly well in small populations. So, you have two retirees flip to age 65, all of a sudden you go, oh, our number dropped dramatically. Well, nothing really changed that was fully expected. If you had 1,000 retirees, it's a far more useful metric.
okay.
But it's just, we should try to show all the numbers out there, just for that.
And then, so then that kind of leads me to, so on your last year, your projected cash flows.
Yep.
On page 13, we see that there is the fiduciary net position of the $87,000 here on July 1st, 2018.
Yep.
And then going to July 1st, 2019, we have 180, which is roughly a contribution of just under $100,000.
Yep.
Is that your expected, is that a reasonable contribution? How did you arrive at that
Yeah.
number?
Well,
to
so
do this
again, what
forecast?
happens is we had the 84,000 or thereabouts to win in this year. With interest gets me to 87,000 on that date.
Mhm.
We put another 84,000 or thereabouts. With interest gets me to 180 on that date.
Oh, so you just mirrored the same contribution as the
Exactly. We have the same
84,608.
$84,000 forever. This is just fiduciary net position, as I said before, is the GASB term for what is
Okay.
commonly known in the real world as
So
assets.
that's driven by payment of the column 6 here, right? Excess employer payments.
Exactly,
So we're
exactly.
just driving it by that figure
And to
there.
my earlier comment about present value, again, if you're looking at the report on page 62 at the very back of it.
Okay.
So that, you'll see that $40 million in present value terms is 12.8. And then the employer share of premiums to go, we were going from 280 grand to 1.2 million. Well, that number becomes 392. So again, as I tell folks, your cash out the door cost right now is 280. It's gonna go to 392 over 40 years. So it's going up by 30% over 40 years. If you factor in the 84 grand you're paying on top already, you're already at a 370-ish number already, and we're gonna go to 390. This is not an insurmountable problem.
Okay.
Now again, to the earlier comment about employer share of costs, you'll also see in that same item number 5, it goes from 280 this year down to 203, down to 187, and then we'll start ramping back up again. So it goes to, again, of your retirees, when they hit that cliff of Medicare, those costs come down, and then they will start to come back up over time. But, so you just have some people that are on the wrong side of the line, and once they hit that other side, then your numbers look a lot better.
Well, thank you. I appreciate the thorough explanations.
Not a problem at all.
Yeah, anybody else have anything?
My questions were all related to page 13, and Cameron
Cameron hit
just
it.
answered them.
Excellent.
Yep.
Mr. Santini, you have anything?
I think he's hit upon two important sides. First is controlling the liability itself, which you've done when you switched from the MedX 3 to the MedX 2 plan, and you addressed the contribution rate going up that 27, 28. It's slow, it's painful, but it's a plan.
Yep.
And it will have meaningful impact over time.
Yep.
Dental, different contribution rates, different benefit platforms, all things you can deal with down the road. On the asset side, I am pleased to report to you that I believe Mr. Driscoll's FY20 budget will include the begins of a annual contribution around $75,000. On his side, we've asked Sewer to make a similar but smaller commitment, 25, 26,000 next year, increasing 3-4% a year, which will help bring the overall balance sheet into better shape. Granted, it's all on the utility side of things. On the general fund side, we have the plan that's in the financial management, and for the balance, yeah, when the accrued liability of the pension's paid off, whatever that number is. If you can bear in mind, whoever is here at the time will take that delta between the fully retired liability and then the present cost that has to be paid every year, and take that delta and invest it, you will be able to dent this over time. Now, some of that isn't going to show up until our next credit rating report. Credit rating agencies like to see that the budget's actually containing that 75 and the 25.
Right.
But you're in better shape. I like to concentrate on the positive, and you are in better shape than many of your peers, provided we don't lose sight of that plugging away at it. We do have the full reports. We'll get those to you at the end of the meeting.
Okay.
Lots of gobbledygook, but if there's any questions on anything, just get those to us, and we'll get them out and get you answers.
Sounds good. You have anything else?
Nope.
Anyone else have anything else? Thank you so much for coming. Thanks for the presentation. I appreciate it.
Coming up. I want to compliment the firm. This was a value-added service to come out this evening. This was your first run through it. We thought it important that they take some time, and we appreciate their assistance commitment to helping you understand.
Thank you.
What you'll be looking at.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Help, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Kelly, thank you. And I was a little remiss as the meeting started, so bear with me. I forgot public comments, which I usually don't like to do, but I don't know why I did that, so I do apologize. So I'm going to take public comments.
Can
Can we do
Okay.
the ban first and then do public comments
Gonna do what?
before we, can we do the ban first?
How about we need to identify a clerk. I need a motion to identify a clerk. I need a recommendation.
A clerk?
Clerk for this evening.
Oh, you mean like Doug? I make a
Yes.
motion to
Appoint Doug.
nominate.
Yeah,
appoint-
nominate Doug, yeah, exactly.
Nominate
Pro
Doug
term.
as clerk
Pro
for the
term,
evening.
For the duration of the meeting.
Right, so we can sign the,
I made a motion. Is there a second?
do I have a motion or a second?
Doug, you want to second your own voluntold position?
Uh,
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any other
No one else
discussion? I see none. Kim?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Sure.
Thank you so much for your
Thanks,
time and efforts.
Doug.
And I vote yes as well. Thanks, Doug, for stepping up. I appreciate that. So before we go to open comments, public comments, let's, reaction on the $9 million band award. Mr. Kenji?
This is the second tranche of, or phase of funding. This is $9 million, $7.5 million towards the school,
Yep.
$1.5 million towards the police department. We had three, what I think are competitive bids, which we're very pleased with, reflecting the view that people have of the town's finances. We will have coming up in August the need to renew the sewer bond, and we will have a third tranche or phase of bans sometime in late fall. We're trying to time that in a manner that allows us to have a credit rating in place so that we can perhaps take some of the financing to permanent
Okay.
bond, so that we can take advantage of a lower interest rate, perhaps avoid a small increase.
Okay.
Happy to answer any questions, but I think overall, Southwest served us well, and the staff did a good job at getting everything together in short order.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
I'll make a motion. I move to award the $9 million general obligation bond anticipation notes dated July 16th, 2018 to Jeffries LLC at the interest rate of 2.75%.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes?
did Century Bank only offer us $2 million when we had went out for the $9 million? That was what they just returned for a rate, saying they were only going to give you $2 million? Yep. Okay. That's all, Mr.
Good
Chairman.
question. Any other discussion? I see none. Kim?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. And I would assume you have all the paperwork, Mr. Tanzini?
We do, and Holly will be pinning y'all down before you're allowed out the door without
Understood.
Thank you, Cheryl.
signing it. And let me just point out that the net interest cost is actually at 2.2% because of the bond premium, which we use first to
Okay.
Awesome.
pay the flotation cost, the cost of issuance,
Right.
and then anything that's left after the cost of issuance are used to reduce the final bonding amount.
Okay.
So the 2.2, I think, is very good in this climate.
Excellent. All right, now that we did that, public comments. Oh, hey now. Ladies first. I just identified it. Come on up and,
Gail Noel,
hi, Gail.
Friends of the Templeton Elders.
Yes, ma'am.
So mac and cheese is this weekend.
It is Saturday.
Everything is going well. The weatherman's gonna cooperate.
Excellent.
I have a parking plan all signed off,
You do?
and, we will be having a Hometown Hero Award
Yes.
this year, and the town is welcome to participate if they choose. And, you know, we have Senator Goby and Representative Lee coming
Excellent.
for that. And that's
Forget.
just what I wanted to say.
Okay, and so everything's going well?
Yes, it is. The only thing I noticed is that the church is having a recycling day from 9 to 2 that same day. You know, and
Okay.
we've got written permission to use the parking lot for handicap.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, yes, sir.
just for the public watching, what time is it?
It starts at 10 and ends at 4.
Saturday, correct?
And food will start at 11.
Could you just explain the parking a little bit?
Sure. I can give you a copy.
Thank you. I just wanted to explain it for
Yeah.
the public.
Yeah. There'll be all handicap parking at First Church.
You can just give one to, she's old box, that's fine. Thanks.
And there's also a little bit of parking to the side and back of First Church. Parking is available at both Country Mischief facilities. Parking on the grass in Boynton. Parking in the field beside the library. We also have permission to park at the former Pat's Farm Stand, which is now Constantino's.
Yep, Polly's Place.
There'll be parking on only one side of Wellington and South at the beginning, and later on, there'll be parking on both sides. We're going to close the short South Road and park on one side of Baldwinville Road.
Okay. And have you utilized, obviously, the police department will be there, I would assume?
Absolutely. We
Okay.
have 2 police officers.
And have we utilized the CERT team at all? Have they been notified?
Yes, they have.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
And, you know, so on our hometown hero, the town is welcome to participate if they choose. And this is a confidential.
Yes. You just, we just give us one, just give us one, yeah, it's confidential, that way, less people that have it, the best it's gonna be.
All righty?
All right, well, thank you. Anybody have any questions for Gail?
Thank you, Gail, for everything.
Thanks for doing, yes.
I just don't understand the hometown hero thing. How is that being voted?
That's a good question. I had the same question. Basically, what, it's the board of directors for the
Friends.
501c3 Friends of Templeton Elders has initiated that process, where the board actually collaborates.
The applications and then they vote on it?
They have their process, that's what I was informed.
They do it, not us.
And they send the application to, or not, they send the individual name to the state rep and the senator's office, and then, I specifically asked that question. Doug, can you help me out?
Sure. I mean, it's, again, you know, the Friends of the Templeton Elders is a, 501c3 organization. It's not a part of the town. And as an independent corporation, we do fundraising and chose to do this award as part of, our,
Recognizing our
functions, right? Volunteers that have made a significant contribution to the community and the, the senior center. So we do have a process that the board of directors goes through, and we, make evaluations throughout the year, and prior to the Mac and Cheese Festival, we determine who the recipient is going to be that year. We have asked, the senator and the representative just to, make the award, just a little more special. Last year, the town also, included a presentation in the award, and certainly
Are you
welcome to
gonna
do that.
Are we gonna do that again?
That's,
Are you recommending we should do that again?
Can I see that paper?
I was just confused because I thought last year the board presented it. I thought it was the board's thing last year.
no, the reason it was done at the selectmen's meeting last year is
it
because
rained.
we had the rain and the tornado
Oh,
during
okay.
the Mac and Cheese, so we weren't able to do the ceremony at the Mac and Cheese.
So it was done here
So it was
instead.
done here.
Oh, okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Did you see that?
Yeah, yep.
Is this board agreeable to do another proclamation, just like we did last year, on the behalf of the individual
Yeah.
awardee?
I vote that we do. I make a motion that we do a proclamation.
Okay. I have a motion to make a proclamation. Do I have a second?
Second?
I have a motion, second. Any other discussion? I see none. Kim?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
I'm going to abstain since I'm part of the selection.
Roger. And I vote yes as well. Did you get that, Holly? Yes, Mr. Tanzini.
Just logistics, may I suggest that the proclamation, well, perhaps issued on behalf of a unanimous select board, be signed by just the chairman and the town clerk, just so that we can make
Yeah.
sure we have the signatures for Saturday, as opposed to
Do I need to
needing to
amend
get
my
everybody in,
But just make an addition too. Okay.
if that's agreeable.
Right.
That's
It will
agreeable
note
to
on
me.
behalf
Is that
of the
agreeable to you?
unanimous.
Is that agreeable to you?
Is that agreeable to you, Kim?
Yep.
Yeah,
right,
that
that's
makes
fine.
more
That's
sense.
what I'm trying to cut down.
What,
Yeah.
Holly?
So this will have to be done tomorrow.
Yes. And if, I think in the future, I mean,
you
I
want me
was
to come in and
notified
help
a
you?
week ago. But again, the board collectively has to meet in order to address the issue. So if we can get this a little bit more ahead of time, maybe the Friends of Templeton Elders can start their process a little bit earlier.
Yeah, and I'll take, I mean, I should have contacted you sooner, but I failed to do
Shame
so.
on you.
So, yes,
Shame.
I certainly,
Is
take
that something we can take
responsibility.
care of tomorrow? Is that something? I mean, I can come in tomorrow.
I can come in too. I'll
We'll,
help.
we'll get it done. We will need
We need your signature
whoever
anyway.
this is.
Yeah, we have the paper.
Okay.
Who's got it now? Oh, you have it. Can you make sure that Holly gets that?
Yeah, but I didn't open it yet.
Oh, okay. Well, when you're done with it,
I will.
that'll be great. Thank you. All right, any other open business? Yes, sir. Just identify yourself for the records.
Yes, Dennis Rich, 230 South Road.
Hi, Dennis.
Actually, I have some questions regarding, it sounds as though you've established a process for the use of the common for activities.
No,
And the Narragansett Historical Society has a couple events coming
I
up
don't have a policy.
in
Yeah.
September.
Well, the first thing, we haven't established any written policy yet. We're, again, flying kind of like on the seat of our pants until that policy's in effect and making sure that things are in place and and people are safe at the common while this year, while the activity's going on with the building of the new school. But that is in play. I mean, Miss Haley Brooks is in works now, and she's working on that. It takes
It's
a little
almost
time.
done.
It's almost done. There's something coming. It might be at one of our upcoming workshops as well.
We have events coming up in September.
Yes.
Is there any specific things that we need to look at doing before we
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
proceed any further?
I believe Brian Tangway had already presented, I believe it's like a car show that would
There's a
be
car show and then
Lollapalooza
we're
thing?
having
a Halloween festival of some sort,
a
correct?
Halloween festival, but
He,
that will be in October.
He
and-
actually brought forward three
And Jack
events.
Frost. The
Yeah,
Jack
and Jack
Frost.
Frost. He had brought forward 3 events.
Okay.
The Board of Selectmen actually approved all 3.
The Halloween event and the car show will use probably much of the common, but the
Mhm.
event, the other event we're having is a class reunion tea, which is gonna probably involve the need for some additional parking. And, I don't know, are there any specific steps that we're going to have to?
What we've been advised as folks is to utilize the police department. Yes, Mr. Tanzini?
Well, at this point, we have an indemnification agreement that we ask people to sign. We have some insurance requirements. Those are not particularly onerous, but they can take a little while for the insurance agent to get for them as a rider to their existing policy. And we ask, this body has asked the sponsors to meet with the chief of police and present just even as a hand sketch of where you're gonna park people, what's gonna go on, so that the chief of police and the fire chief can just sign off on this. I know that the more formal whys and wherefores are coming
It's
along,
almost
but those
done.
3 really cover the basics
Right.
at this point.
Does that answer your questions?
So, we should probably initially check with the chief of police, is that the?
Well, I'm gonna see if you need an insurance rider for the common, if it's a outside show, that you need insurance in case somebody gets hurt. And just meet up with the Board of Selectmen office just to, during the course of the week, and they'll get some forms for you, I guess, that you need to the organization will need to fill out.
Okay,
And then, obviously, then it'll be for parking and stuff like that, it'll be police department, fire department.
okay.
We will have a more guided plan/policy coming forward
When
that
you-
identifies everything.
When you're formulating those plans, I'd like to encourage you to try to make them as comfortable for
Oh, they will
our
be.
organizations
No, they
in
will be.
town to be able to
We don't want to take anything away.
meet those obligations.
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay.
It's not going to be cumbersome at all,
Okay,
okay?
all right, thank you.
You're very welcome. Yes, Gail?
And for those planning, you know, like, events for the next year, you know, which we kind of start immediately
Mhm.
after, especially if you have to reserve a venue.
Right.
So, you know, you did say you would evaluate the situation after
We will.
the event.
Yeah, so we'll get the input from you guys, from the police department, fire department. We'll get after-action reviews to make sure everything went where it needed to go and everything went smooth. Anything else? Any other open comments? Yes, sir. South Road? Okay. Think we
Hi,
get-
Joe.
It's good to see you again.
Joe Jamucci, South Road. I
Nice
came in-
T-shirt.
Thank you. Came in 2 weeks ago. I came in 13 months ago also to start the process
Mhm.
with 200 residents on South Road area neighborhood to resolve South Road, and it was, small area was repaved last
Mhm.
fall. Came out very nice. Everyone appreciated it. I understand the issues with the right-of-ways, with drainage, engineering stuff. We're still working on it, I believe. It's
Mhm.
been 4 or 5 years, and there's a section beyond that on the corner going up Henshaw's Hill with Henshaw's Track Service. Left-hand side is a bunch of dirt now. Over the course of the winter, hasn't been swept up yet. It's a big pile of dirt. They tried to pick it with a front end loader one day last week. They got some dirt up, but still a lot of dirt in there. That's going down South Road headed north. And they're coming down South Road headed south, coming down the hill across Henshaw Service is a bunch of road deteriorating, made a big gully coming down. If a car gets stuck in it, it could flip over, roll over. There's been 3 or 4 serious accidents since I've been living there. And it's an all underground spring across the road. It's a very challenging area. It's a recipe for disaster. I think it should be looked at. They put some rocks down the bottom with a drain across the road and a gully is, but coming down South Road head itself is a big gully there. The road's being deteriorated, washed away. It's just, this is going to collapse.
Okay.
And it could be dangerous. There's kids on bicycles and whatever in the summertime and stuff. It's a narrow road. It's a lot of traffic there. It should be looked into, I feel.
Okay.
I don't think there's no engineering problems up that section. I think it's all good neighbors in that area have been there for a long period of time. They take care of their front yards, always clean, picked up nice. When neighbors crossed the road one day, went outside, there's junk in the road. He goes, I can fix the problem. Went out with his 2 or 3 kids and picked the rubbish up. Solved the problem.
Okay, well, I
So
I
people
saw
do-
Mr. Tenzini scribbling away down there, so I'm assuming that he's got that information and he will be in contact with somebody from the highway department, I'm assuming?
Yeah, if Joe can maybe give me the street number.
It's the
at
bottom of the hill. It's, I think the
Bottom
people's
of the hill.
Chadiest House and Lawn Log Cabin.
Okay.
That area there, going up to Henshaw's Track Service, left-hand side there. Now, should there be a certain selectman in charge of this area? You just have different departments, one person in charge of police, one person in charge of the public works possibly, like years ago, you
No.
had a different section?
No.
Who should I contact then?
The Board of Selectmen office, Mr. Tenzini?
None of you people here.
If you want some accountability, here's my business card, and if it doesn't get taken care of, please contact me, and I'll make sure it does get taken care of.
Okay.
We're all accountable. We're all responsible.
Yeah, I understand.
And we will do the best we can within the resources that we have
You're
to make sure
limited,
that
I know
things.
you're limited employees, limited money, I understand that. You know,
I mean, that's, and unfortunately, that's the,
we do the best we can
that's
do.
the business that we're in.
Yeah.
And it's not the best, but unfortunately, that's where we're at. But I
Okay.
understand your compassion, and obviously, we do want to do the right things for you and for the town, but unfortunately, when you're, again, and resources and dollars is what drives the train. Unfortunately, it's not enough to go around.
But we're gonna continue to move forward.
Of course, of course.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for coming in. Comments? Yes, sir.
Rich Curtis, Emergency Management Director.
How you doing?
Good.
Good to see you.
Back in May, I came to a selectmen's meeting
Yes.
where it was approved that activities were going to be allowed to happen on the common.
Mm-hmm.
At that time, I was the understanding that these committees or coordinators were going to meet with us to do this. Right now, I've met with one group, and that's the Arts and Crafts Festival.
Okay.
But I've not met with anybody else. Now, we do have an activity coming up this weekend. Now, I see that she passed a parking plan out to you, but I have gotten no direction from the town on that. Now, I was to the understanding that these plans had to be presented to the board had to approve them prior to the event.
Mhm.
Because I got this in an email from Mike Dixon, and, well, it kind of conflicts with what the chief had told me for parking.
Well, the chief signed this.
All right, well, that's, again, I don't have that.
I mean, I'm gonna go with the chief said, but as far as, so has the Mac and Cheese Festival, has that group have met with you?
No.
We haven't physically met with them, but we've notified them.
Yeah, I called you earlier, a couple months ago. We kind of talked in the hallway one evening.
Now, the parking on one side of Bolivar Road was one of the examples.
The chief didn't tell me which side he was gonna choose to park.
Well, when I talked to him, he said he wasn't gonna allow anything from Otter River Road toward the center.
Joe.
At all.
Yes, sir.
So I don't know. But I just need there to be a little bit more
Communication, I got you.
I mean, you know, we're talking 3 or 4 days before the event, and
Are your guys all ready to rock and roll on Saturday?
well, we're short of volunteers this year, but we'll get there.
Okay,
But we'll find a way.
all right.
Are we gonna allow parking on the town lawns at the center?
Well, that's a great question. That was.
On the what?
The town lawns.
The lawns.
Like, in front of the Boynton Library, like in front of,
Yeah, it says park in field between library and the rectory.
And on.
Park on grass on Boynton. They're not allowed to park, they're only allowed to park on the grass on Boynton because,
Right, because Boynton's not big enough to allow parking.
no, and the emergency vehicles need
Right.
to get by, and are you having a shuttle?
No.
No, so if there was a shuttle, that's where it was gonna go. Park on both Country Mischief facilities, she must have, volunteered that, and, parking to the left and behind the First Church. So, it was I thought the chief of police was gonna reach out to you.
I talked to him quite a while ago, and I've got nothing, I mean,
Well, I
parking
definitely
technically-
have not gotten any alerts, from you that you were needed, that we were needed this weekend.
Well, the alert system has been shut down.
Oh, well, I guess,
did the police department move?
and I need a shirt.
Code Red will take its place very shortly, but we haven't,
Well, how are we gonna be notified?
gotta set it up first.
Eric, excuse me,
Yes, go ahead.
has Eric reached out to you to rebuild that?
No.
Okay, I will have Eric Baker
I mean, I've got a
reach out to you to
I've got a
rebuild
group
that
on
as a
there
work
already.
group. Okay.
but it's gotta be expanded. I just got the passwords and whatnot for it this,
Okay, so thanks for the reminder, because within my, notes, it was also supposed to be stated that the, which I think we had already stated about fundraising, and that associations and the, departments such as yourself would be allowed to fundraise. So, no, I thought that you would be on the list to specifically be
we were called,
contacted.
but
it
we never
wasn't
met with
finalized.
this
body.
organization
Right,
or.
so I mean, I guess I do apologize. I believe I talked to you on the telephone and we talked in the hallway after a selectmen's meeting, but we never sat down
Right.
and had a formal meeting. So I didn't realize we weren't,
Well, I
you
mean,
know, all
that's
set
the way I
and ready
thought
to
the
go.
board wanted it. I don't know, that's why I'm here, because I was under the impression
Well,
that we were
more,
gonna
the
meet.
policy is gonna be coming forth, and that way everybody will understand, and it will be easy for everybody to understand, and there'll be a process in place.
Sorry, Rhett.
Forms in place, applications, so to speak, in place, the need of insurance information to be in place, that type of stuff, that it is forthcoming. It's just taken, you know, we're getting all our ducks in a row and putting all the, you know, together, so hopefully we get maybe at a workshop. I mean, I know Diane's been working diligently on it, so,
Well, our workshop's not till August.
right. So, I mean, it is being worked, so I do apologize for the confusion. But, I mean, you do have staff that are potentially gonna be there for Saturday for the safety of the pedestrian traffic. The police chief did authorize, based on the sketch here that I'm looking at, the parking where they are parking, so, and unfortunately, this is the first event, so if he approved this, I'm sure he's gonna approve the same for the other events as well.
Good.
And obviously, then when the school is done and school is open, and obviously, those additional parking spaces will become available as well.
Okay, because at one point there was concern about the lawns, because the amount of traffic that
Right.
could go on those lawns. Like, mac and cheese is getting bigger, but the arts and crafts could potentially devastate those lawns.
Right.
Because I know it tears up the school field, or the old school field, quite a bit, so I just,
Thank you.
okay.
I got it.
That's it.
Thank you so much. Yes,
Rich.
Kelly.
Rich,
Rich?
I need a shirt. Large.
Yes, Kelly.
I just wanted to agree with what he said. Last year, the highway department spent a significant amount of
Thousands.
staff time and materials to get the lawns back in, shape. So I think that that's something just in policies and things that needs to really be looked at about the parking, so that the town is not gonna be liable for spending all of that staff time and supplies to repair those lawns every year from the
Well,
events.
if it's on here, I hope that the highway department is aware that parking is being done. I don't know if between the library and the rectory is town property, but the grass on Boynton is.
And that's where we spent
So
those
if the
significant
highway
dollars.
is not aware of that, they might be very upset come Monday. Because they've just been out there mowing and pruning that grass. I don't know what to say.
They'll be very upset on Monday.
They'll be very upset on Monday. Okay. Then there should be no parking there.
They'll be very upset on Monday. Great. Okay.
Well,
Any other public comments? And I do apologize. It usually comes number 3 on my list here. I totally missed it, so I do apologize. Moving on to old business, change of manager of liquor license for the Thirsty Turtle, continued, part 2.
That should be in the policy.
Just come up, just have a seat, identify yourself for the record.
I know, I know.
Jason, how are you?
Taylor Arsenal.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Great.
Hi Kayla, it's nice to meet you.
You too.
Okay, it's definitely nice to meet you.
You too.
Okay, so, we had this on the agenda. Jason, you showed up. Obviously, you were unable to attend.
That was my mistake.
No worries, no worries. It's just a good practice that we have visibility of who the manager, director's gonna be in charge. Ultimately, the liquor license ultimately is yours. You know what I'm saying? It's your license, but obviously, based on the process that's been placed under Mass General Law, we have to, with the guidelines of identifying the manager of the establishment. Does anybody have any questions for these parties?
So I was the one with all the questions,
Okay.
Kayla, about your management experience. So in your own words, could you explain to me what qualifications you have? And
I'm
I was
tip-
told that you're TIP
sorry.
certified.
Yeah, I am. I've been tip certified for 5 years. I've been waitressing and bartending for 5 years now. I've been helping at the Turtle since my dad bought it, about a year now. Just learning stuff here and there. I've been there a lot in the past 6 months, really learning stuff. Even now, I pop in and out all the time, every day, different times. I'm there a lot.
So what would your major role be there?
A little bit of everything, I guess. I'm doing orders. I don't really know. It's hard to describe everything, but
Okay, so
overseeing
you'll
everything.
be helping her to take over the reins?
Yes, and she's aware, I'm sure she's nervous up here, she's aware of all the laws that we have to follow regarding purchasing of alcohol, where we can purchase it, where we can sell it, what times we can sell it. She's aware of all that. She's aware that ultimately is part of her responsibility. And she's been, like she said, she's been going in there at all times, making sure everything's in order and there isn't any, trying to keep on top of any funny business that's going on. And she's been doing a good job.
Great.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
As a proprietor or a LLC, you have the right to choose whoever you want for a manager, and that's ultimately your business at the end of the day. The only liability that I can see here is on the town's end, and so primarily the point here is that you will, obey by the liquor laws and that you will shut down the place before 2 o'clock at night on Fridays and Saturdays, and you will not serve alcohol before 10 a.m. So, I mean, on my aspect, as long as you're able to maintain that and you take ownership for that, then you have my support.
Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, Holly, I just have one for you. Why does this say Catherine when it's Jason? Can you read that, please?
She just wants to make sure that the motion is correct.
That name's not right, not according to this. If you look at the applicant's statement. I'm not gonna read that if it's wrong.
Are you talking about the from too?
Right. It says Jason, not.
The manager?
Well, I don't know, what is this right here, when I was reading?
He's the applicant, but this is the manager's name, the old one and the new one.
And she signed up on everything?
The old one?
Is everything here accurate?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
can
everything's
I
accurate.
take that, please? I'd like to make a motion.
Okay, good.
I move to approve the change of manager on the liquor license for Trestle Bridge LLC, DBA The Thirsty Turtle Pub, from Catherine E. Richard to Kayla M. Arsenal, pending approval from the ABCC.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion, a second, any other discussion?
Thank you, Kayla, for coming in.
I see none. Kim?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Doug?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Okay, you got your hands full with that.
Thank you very much, and I apologize
Not
for
really.
not showing up.
Yeah, no worries, no worries.
Thank you, Kayla, we wish you good luck.
Thank you so much, Kayla.
See you, Kayla.
Any board or staff member comments or reports at this time?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to address the board.
Sure.
Good evening, members of the board, and thank you for allowing me to address you publicly. I would ask that members of the board and anyone in the audience to allow me to finish this speech before interruption, and that the chairman enforce his recognition of granting me the floor in this assembly. I'm hoping that this dialogue I'm about to recite will not discourage the board members, but rather enlighten them to the issues that this board currently faces and will continue to be an eternal struggle, unless these items are brought before them in open forum, allowing reform to be addressed. Before I get into my speech, I wish to read you a letter written almost exactly 155 years ago during the height of the Civil War. This letter, which was at the time a scathing rebuke, but generally does not seem to be very expressive by Bonnard standards. The letter was addressed to Major General Meade and attempts to express profound disappointment with Meade's inability to pursue and destroy General Robert E. Lee's army after the Battle of Gettysburg. This sounds like a stretch, but I promise I will connect an angry letter about Gettysburg to Templeton politics. The letter reads, Major General Meade, I have just seen your dispatch to General Halleck asking to be relieved of your command because of a supposed censure of mine. I am very, very grateful to you for the magnificent success you gave the cause of the country at Gettysburg. And I am sorry now to be the author of the slightest pain to you, but I wish in such deep distress myself that I could not restrain some expression of it. I had been oppressed nearly ever since the Battle of Gettysburg by what had happened to be evidence that yourself and General Couch and General Smith were not seeking a collision with the enemy, but were trying to get him across the river without another battle. What these evidences were, if you please, I hope to tell you at some time when we shall both feel better. The case summarily stated in this, you had fought and beat the enemy at Gettysburg, and of course, to say the least, his loss was as great as yours. He retreated, and you did not, and it seemed to me pressingly pursue him, but a flood in the river detained him till by slow degrees you were again upon him. You had at least 20,000 veteran troops directly with you and as many more raw ones within supporting distance, all in addition to those who fought with you at Gettysburg. While it was not possible that he had received a single recruit, and yet you stood and let the flood run down, bridges be built, and the enemy move away at his leisure, without attacking him. And Couch and Smith, the latter left Carlisle in time upon all ordinary calculations to have aided you in the last battle at Gettysburg. But he did not arrive. More at the end of more than 10 days, I believe 12, under constant urging, he reached Hagerstown from Carlisle, which is not an inch over 50 miles, and if so much. and Couch's movement was very little different. Again, my dear General, I do not believe you appreciate the magnitude of this misfortune involved in Lee's escape. He was within your easy grasp, and to have closed upon him in connection with our late successes have ended the war. As it is, the war will be prolonged indefinitely. If you could not safely attack Lee last Monday, how can you possibly do so south of the river, when you can take with you very few more than 2/3 of the force that you had in hand? It would be unreasonable to expect, and I do not expect you can now effect much. Your golden opportunity is gone, and I am distressed immeasurably because of it. I beg you will not consider this a persecution or prosecution of yourself. As you had learned that I was dissatisfied, I have thought it best to kindly tell you why. This was a letter written by none other than Abraham Lincoln. I had sought solace in this letter, the solace that I was about to do what a man far greater than me could ever have hoped to done. He had gracefully expressed frustration to a man deemed to be of great incompetence. I, too, was hoping to capture my profound disappointment to the Board of Selectmen, but the true story of this letter does not stop with Abraham Lincoln's eloquent written words, but it is the fate of the letter that is the true story and lesson. You see, after Lincoln had written this letter, he never signed it, and he never sent the letter to Major General Meade. He never intended for anyone to see him express his frustrations. Instead, he expressed his feelings openly in a letter never intended to be seen, as a form to control his anger. You see, the man addressed in this letter, Major General Meade, was the commander of the Army of the Potomac, which had suffered very heavily at the Battle of Gettysburg, with over 20,000 casualties and the loss of many of its best officers and enlisted men. Meade may have been fully justified in not attempting a rapid pursuit with his army in such a battered condition, and possibly Lincoln had seen and refrained from sending the letter. Or perhaps Lincoln realized that providing such an angry letter to General Meade would not have solved the missed opportunity, which was already gone. So as I wrote a scathing speech to come before you tonight, I reflected upon who I was speaking to. Tonight, I am speaking to a group of 3 elected officials who volunteer time from their busy lives filled with family, and their primary compensation for their duties as an elected official comes in the form of harsh critique. So just as Lincoln more than likely had reflected upon the situation of Major General Meade and set down that letter, I reflected upon the words I was about to express to you tonight, and saw that it wouldn't have solved any of the issues that are happening now or the opportunities we have missed. In retrospect and in reflection, there is no need to further divide this community or to alienate people who dedicate their time so selflessly. I too put down my scathing speech and began to write anew. Now for the but. I do believe in opening the doors for opportunity, and do not know what struggles, hardships, or knowledge this Board of Selectmen faces behind closed doors in their own homes. But I do know the current struggles this board currently faces in their capacity as selectmen. So as I recite the following words from my speech, please know that this is sincere and honest, while maintaining an attempt to be respectful of individuals as a whole. Please see this as an attempt to strengthen us by highlighting problems so that we may discuss them openly amongst ourselves and with the community. I will highlight in the sentences to come why I believe our board has failed our community and why there should be a complete reform on our behalf to better align ourselves with the community's needs. This reform I will be calling for does not require any bylaw changes, will incur no costs to the town, and would be able to be implemented almost immediately. I believe that this will drive accountability on the board as a whole and will help provide increased participation from the Board of Selectmen members to hold their peers accountable. We must, as a board, strive to become better and to empower each other so that we may empower this community with a positive message that unity, collaboration, and more hopeful future is in store. The word that will be repeated countless times is apathy. Apathy is defined as a lack of interest, enthusiasm, or concern. Whether it is intentional or not, this board has expressed apathy towards its residents, employees, and businesses within the community. To support this claim, I will discuss recent and relevant facts. In the name of apathy towards the residents, let us review the timeline of Laurel View Road. Alan Mayo, our former DPW director, had placed his resignation before Carter on April 24th of this year, and it was reported to the town by the town administrator on April 25th. In his resignation, he stated his last day was May 4th. This is important to note because the preceding events happened after Alan Mayo had departed. May 10th, Carter stated that he will be acting interim DPW director for the purpose of, and I quote, permits and the like. 7 days later, on May 17th, a red list notification or notification that their private way will be taken off the approved list of roads that the town will pave, or, plow. It was also addressed that this would become standard operating procedure to review private ways and their eligibility for plowing on an annual basis. This would entail sending out red list letters to residents whose private ways needed to be fixed in order to be plowed. June 7th, a meeting was scheduled for June 18th with the residents due to overwhelming feedback from the residents of Laurel View Road regarding this news. There was roughly 30 people in attendance. Not a single representative from the Board of Selectmen was there. This was a rapidly evolving and changing DPW procedure enacted by the interim DPW director that could potentially impact lives. We have recently levied taxes more than 2.5% to provide a full ALS service worth $300,000 plus to the residents of Templeton. This resulted in a tax rate increase for the entire town, which included these residents. Regardless of their support for the service, they will be taxed for it. They are also taxed for their access to the schools, police, fire station, and other amenities that are accessible to them. The irony comes from safety being a primary focus of this board, and now we are putting lives at risk yet again by threatening to not plow the roads. It would seem that Carter has acted out in a way that would possibly conflict with the interests and the will of the board. In a report published by the Selectman's office, Carter had stated he will work with legal to understand liability on the town's behalf for not plowing the road. The report expressed monetary liability for not providing basic town services such as fire, police, and EMS, but not ethical or moral concerns of these citizens who pay their taxes. By not plowing the roads and allowing emergency services that once again we as a board unanimously voted to support to do their job and save lives, we play a dangerous game of who is more valuable. Now, I'm not suggesting with this issue that there is an instant solution or that this decision is not a tough decision when we consider the coffers. But to allow our interim DPW director to approach a subject that is outside of his scope of duties normally, which is day-to-day operations, without any recourse from the Board of Selectmen is apathetic, as it is poor leadership on our part. I am currently unaware of the board's feelings on this subject because it hasn't been discussed openly. But I am hopeful that the board has the same feelings towards the subject that I do after revealing the facts. We can do better. The road does not stop at an issue such as Laurel View Road, though. The apathy this board has shown to the recent resignation of the municipal management fellow is clear and present, a position in which the town administrator was to train, develop, and retain the talent for potential succession of the town administrator position. This plan was brought forth to the board by Carter Terenzini, and the board accepted his proposal. This is by no means a reflection of Carter's plan as a failure, to which may have been successful under different circumstances, but this succession plan was the plan to get Templeton out of a cycle of interim and part-time town administrators. Carter currently cannot operate more than part-time due to his retirement, and he is elected to receive a salary based upon those hours. With the current town administrator working part-time hours and no succession plan, we are currently a notch above interim. My concern upon hearing this news and Carter's current contract is the possible lack of continuity in leadership. This was specifically called out by both the Department of Revenue and our external auditors as a concern of their own. Shortly after hearing the news of Eric's resignation, I had a call with the chairman of the board about holding a special meeting to discuss possible concerns. The meeting did not come to fruition given the 4th of July. However, it is now 2 weeks since the resignation letter, and 1 day remains before Eric's last day. An entire week has gone by since I requested some items be placed on the agenda, but to no avail. Tonight's meeting contained no discussion on the issue and no reporting for possible solutions for the town administrator position. To Carter's benefit, he had sent an email explaining possible options via email, in which we cannot deliberate upon unless an open discussion. If we wait until the last second to deliberate on solution to this issue, we would be in October, when Carter's contract is up for renewal. We will have minimal options to choose from for a solution. I'm calling for proactive approaches to these problems and collaboration to take place earlier with the citizens, employees, and third parties that may be able to help us in finding a solution. We have a brilliant set of minds within this community and full support from the state of Massachusetts, and yet we're going to push this off with apathy until the final hour. We need to do better. Another concern I had was in relationship to the resignation of the municipal management fellow and also the assistant town accountant within a relatively short period of time. Turnover was specifically mentioned in our audits as well. Lack of stable financial personnel and leadership has created continuity gaps. A general concern for these turnover rates had me placing a call to Mr. Terenzini to see what was driving these turnover rates. If there was to be an issue, my follow-up questions would have been, how can the board work with the chief executive officer of the town to mitigate these risks? I had brought up the concern about human resources within the town of Templeton, or rather the lack thereof. The conversation, paraphrased of course, when something like, Carter, I'm not saying you did anything and I'm not accusing you of anything because I do not have any strong evidence to support a claim of wrongdoing on your part. However, the issue I have is that you are the HR director, correct? To which he stated, as well as wearing many other hats, yes. So in reply, I stated, again paraphrased, do you see a potential conflict of interest being the hiring, firing authority, direct supervisor, and HR director? In which he stated, no, I see no issue. It had become apparent to me that there was a major issue at that moment. The inability for the chief executive officer to understand a potential conflict of interest with these roles reveals that if there was an issue, Mr. Terenzini would not be able to report it to us appropriately, because what he understands to be an issue is clearly disconnected with a basic ethics 101 at Mount Wachusett Community College. This gentleman holds a Master's of Public Administration. Now, I know Carter to be an intelligent man and expect he knows exactly what the issue was and that I'm about to reveal to you. But if anyone has not taken a basic ethics course, let me reveal why this is a concern through an example. And if this example resembles any real situation, it is purely coincidental and unintentional. So here it is. Supervisor A has the ability to hire, fire, has 2 employees reporting to him, and is also the HR director. Employee A feels that Supervisor A is favoring Employee B because they are the same gender. And Employee A is of the opposite gender, which has placed Employee A into a possible situation of gender discrimination. In our example, Employee A could approach Supervisor A but risk possible retaliation from Supervisor A, such as being fired or harassed until resignation, or they sit in silence and don't speak to anyone until they either resign of frustration or the entity, the town, has a lawsuit on their hands. Why would we subject employees within this community to the potential of a situation such as this? Now, in a normal situation, a complaint would be lodged to an HR director who is objective to the situation. This complaint would then be placed under review and documented in Supervisor A's personnel file. If it was determined that there was no finding, then Supervisor A would be free to continue doing his job with no actions taken, but the complaint would still sit in his file. 2 months later, Employee C files a complaint with the HR director for the same reasons against Supervisor A. Is this coincidence, or is there truly a case of gender discrimination in this example? This would allow for more evidence to support that Supervisor A could potentially have a gender bias. Currently, we do not have that, so we don't have any way to determine why our employees resigned aside from the words of our town administrator. Now, once again, I am not suggesting that this was the case with either the municipal management fellow or the assistant town accountant, but there is a risk. There is a risk it could have been, and with that comes a legitimate possibility. In this case, the flaw is considerable, and if there was an HR director, we would have reasonable evidence to support a claim for or against mishandling of personnel. I do wish to briefly point out that after discussing the situation of the municipal management fellow, who doesn't appear to be here tonight, that he will be missed and that he will be an asset, that he was an asset to this community. I wish him the best. The Gardner News article, which was ran about him finding new opportunities elsewhere and him wishing us the best, may very well have been sincere. As a reminder, though, to this board and the public, Eric Pollitt has a long public career in front of him, and if he did find discontent with Templeton, Carter, or the Board of Selectmen, I can guarantee he would be smarter than to report that to the media. Now, I'm not claiming Gardner News to be in the category of fake news, as they reported exactly on the quotes provided to them by both Carter and Eric. I personally do not believe the quotes by Eric or Carter in the Gardner News to be the whole truth. And what has ever happened, only they will know. I believe this to be an apathetic approach to holding our town administrator to a higher standard of ethics. It is imperative we do so because we will be the ones holding the bill if lawsuit comes our way. It has been stated time and time again in public sessions by Carter, our taxpayers, ourselves, and certainly our employees, that we do not pay our employees enough money. However, as an employee of a privately held company, I can honestly state that money is not everything. There are arguably three parts to this equation of what makes a job attractive. Certainly, money is one, but a positive working environment is what makes employees show up to work every day, and the interest of their line of work or ability for growth and development is another. I can certainly say in my job I am content with all three aspects of my career at my company. I have worked for employers that have treated me poorly, in which the hardest part of every day was getting in the car and driving a long commute to work. I believe it is our duty as elected officials to ensure our employees want to come to work, be it for lucrative pay, a positive atmosphere, or the possibility for growth and development. Upon touching the human resource issue, it has become apparent that we will not know the morale of the employees within this community because we lack an anonymous avenue or empathetic approach to our employees. Certainly, you could ask for their feedback, but what is protecting those employees to express real discontent or problems from retaliation from their supervisor? We have approached this subject with apathy, and I'm calling for the board to change that. We need to empathize with the employees of this town, for it is they who show up to work every day and provide a service to this community. I'm here to state openly that I value all the employees of this town, and it is not enough to simply state this, but there is a real need from us as a Board of Selectmen to show this. Lastly, this board and our town administrator had engaged upon an obligation to support the school next year. This support will be in the form of a needed override for Templeton, which has been discussed to be more than $1 million. And the budget season will begin in roughly 6 months. We have known this for roughly 3 months. And in knowing this, one could reasonably expect that the board should be engaged in conversations with both Phillipston and the Narragansett Regional School District. The decision to levy taxes for the school impacts not just the taxpayers of Templeton or Phillipston, but it impacts the children of this community, the children of Phillipston, and the children of all neighboring communities who choice into our school. It doesn't even stop there. This will affect one of the largest employers in town. The Narragansett Regional School District employees will be impacted by this vote, and as such, the possibility of personnel being let go is real if this override does not pass. There are careers and futures on the line, and I sit here before you today expressing my fear that this board will take the approach it had with the public safety override. We are the leaders of this community who have previously gambled with the safety of others and vested confidence in the people of Templeton to pass the override. The vote was close, too close for comfort. I, as well as a few others, had empowered those of the Firefighters Association who had not only their jobs on the line, but their livelihood. My comparison between the override for this year and the upcoming override is that it will not pass unless we make an effort to show the community we are searching for alternative solutions to this issue. That we have not exhausted all possibilities and the only reasonable solution we have is to raise taxes. We have asked the townspeople to raise taxes simply to be on par with wealthier communities. That is not an acceptable answer. We have an apathetic approach to people's needs and concerns within this town. People are becoming increasingly aware that tax rate increases and absolutely no effort from us to find alternative for revenue in this town. We cannot keep going back to the taxpayers to levy taxes and not explore alternative options. We have established an economic development industrial corporation who cannot act currently. We have staffed it with people who I cannot state if they are qualified or not because we did not ask for resumes to review their qualifications. We have charged these people with bringing revenue into the town and walked away from the pending issue. This community has no growth, and we are waiting for it to magically fall from the sky. If the solution to our revenue issue is destroying our residents with crippling taxes that wealthier communities currently struggle to afford, then we are not the leaders the citizens of Templeton need. In effect, this makes me contemplate that leadership or direction of this community, be it where we are or where we are headed. Our goal setting has been deplorable. We have set goals last year, and this year we will set goals again in the same manner. For those who may not understand what I'm referencing, last year's goal setting included a ranking of departments by which we thought were to have a higher priority over another. This is demoralizing to employees to know that their selectmen could potentially value their department less favorably than another department, despite all their hard work and efforts. The hard truth is that yes, some departments are not as critical to a functioning town, but that statement does not state that those less critical departments don't bridge the gap of turning Templeton from just a town to a well-connected community. Now, I've spoken a lot tonight, and I hope the information that I've communicated to you was not taken as a personal reflection of any member of the board, but as a reflection of us whole, me included. It is important for us to face those facts of who we are. We are elected officials who ran to be a part of local government. And let us face the tougher fact. We were elected because no one else was crazy enough to take on the workload ahead of us. We don't receive compensation for this work, and we all lead very busy lives. It is apparent to everyone in this room as to why we all ran, though. It is because we all had the intention of bettering this community. My hope is that we were determined to turn this community around despite the challenges we may face, the lack of pay we may receive, and the general lack of recognition we get for the public service we do. The way I see it from the inside looking out, is that we are detached, unfocused, and apathetic towards the town. And if I had the gall to come here tonight and state that when I'm sitting 5 feet away from the rest of the board, then the residents' employees must also feel it and must say it behind our backs. So I'm sitting here today after expressing profound disappointment for the way the Board of Selectmen conducts business. Having used a harsh critique of not only you who are sitting here before me, but of myself, in which I take equal share of the pathetic and apathetic leadership we currently deliver to our constituents. I am calling for reform. I'm calling for aggressive reform that I hope to be placed upon next meeting's agenda so that we can discuss these issues I've highlighted tonight openly and to begin the discussions to resolve these issues sooner rather than later. It is our duty as selectmen to deliver a more unified, connected, and hopeful future for this community. I thank you for your time.
Thanks, Karen. Appreciate that. All right. Does anybody else have anything else, other board member comments? Mr. Tanzini?
I'll just note for the record, I was born in Gettysburg.
Understood. Understood.
I just wanted to, for the public, let them know that we are currently advertising for an assistant town accountant and assistant treasurer collector. Those ads will be going out tomorrow and up on the web, and they're part-time, 19 hours a week, over 4 days with a flexible schedule. On the volunteer side, we do have many openings for our cultural council, and we have fewer but still nonetheless important vacancies on the advisory committee, the conservation commission, and the EDIC. For anyone who's interested in any of those, what kind of time commitment is required, send us an email, stop in the office, and be happy to talk with folks about the responsibilities and the scope of time commitment that's required. Thank you.
Great. Any other board comments?
Yeah, I just have one thing. In the weekly reports, I would just like to make a note that I don't like when there are sections that say nothing to report. I find it hard to believe that there's nothing to report, so I would like that to change.
Okay, Mr. Tanzini, you got that?
We will point that out to folks at the staff meeting tomorrow.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Anything else? Doug, you have anything?
So I was just going to, although we've talked a lot about it tonight, the mac and cheese is Saturday.
Yes.
Hope everybody comes out, has a
Yes.
great time. It's a good event, and it's a good family event. So I hope to see a lot of folks
Superheroes.
there. Superheroes, yeah.
Superheroes will be there.
The parade. We'll have some good music playing.
The CERT team will be there. And the Garden News is gonna be there.
Yep. The more the merrier. It's a good event. Come on out.
Great. Anything else? Excellent. Executive session?
Please, Mr. Chairman.
Per Mass General Law, Chapter 30, Section 21.2, contract negotiations with non-union personnel. We will be coming back in, but not to take any vote.
Are we taking
Just to adjourn the
a
meeting.
5-minute recess?
Excellent.
Can you leave a copy of that for